Here we have one of the, I mean, what can you say about this woman? She has brought up so many artists, actors, dancers, singers alike. She's helped so many theaters get started and continue to grow. And she is just a pillar of this community, one of my mentors. I love her to life, and I'm so thankful that she's allowing me to even do this right now. Ladies and gentlemen, for those who don't know, and I don't know how you could not, but this is the wonderful Miss Lorna Hill. How are you today?
I'm great, Phil. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Yes, well deserved, well deserved. So it's like, how do we start? Why don't we start with what got Miss Lorna Hill wanting to do theater?
Well, I'll start by saying I was a pianist before I became involved in theater. So I already had, I don't know, strong artistic sensibilities. I was trained in classical piano, and because I also went to boarding school, and it was in fact a convent school, music was a very, 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 very important part of my life. Being able to play piano was a very important part of my life. Being able to observe and learn from other pianists was an important part of my life. And then it happened when I was in high school. I might have been a sophomore when someone came to the school and was recruiting student ushers for the Southwark Theater in South Philadelphia, professional theater, Equity House, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, that sounds like fun. And I was a protected child coming up, because I'm the only child, my mother's only child, and she was single head of household. So she was very protective of me, and there weren't a lot of places I could go. But this is something I could do, and I could do independently. It was a long trip from my house to get there, but I signed up. And I started ushering on the weekends. I can't remember exactly how many weekends a month, but as much as I could, I was there. I fell in love with the theater, and I really was able to do that because when we arrived at the theater, there were several options of what our assignment for the day would be. And the assignment that no one wanted was to clean up the theater. And not to scrub it or anything, but to go in and go through the aisles and make sure there was no there were no programs on the floor, no trash in the aisles, etc. You know, just go fluff the place up, so to speak. And the other students weren't interested in doing that. I thought it sounded fine. Plus, it meant that I could be in the theater as opposed to in the lobby doing something like inserting things in programs or whatever.
Right.
So because I was cleaning the theater, I got to watch and hear actors warming up before they went on. They, you know, how actors come out on the stage and they do their physical work and their vocal work. And, you know, some people may do it elsewhere in the building, but a lot of people do it on the actual stage. I got to watch Diana Sands warm up for Phaedra.
Wow.
I had seen Diana Sands in films. She was, in fact, probably my favorite actress at the time. It was jaw-dropping, stunning, moving. I'm in the right place at the right time. It was that kind of experience. I didn't know anything about Phaedra. I had never heard of Racine. Phaedra, of course, is French neoclassic theater. Things like that. And I just fell in love with it. And then the senior class, by the time I was a senior, the senior class was doing the senior class show. It's something that the students write every year and they perform. It's supposed to be very funny. The whole school comes to see it, blah, blah, blah. And at that time, Laugh-In was probably the hottest show on television. So we created a show in the same format as Laugh-In. I wasn't originally part of the creation team, but a very good friend of mine, Joan Loeb, said to me one day in class, because she knew that I wrote well, we really need more writers for this show. I wish you'd come to rehearsal, see what we're doing. So I went. I immediately wrote a scene based on a hygiene film we had just seen called Her Name Was Ellie, His Name Was Lyle. was a show about a film about VD. Needless to say, we thought the thing was very funny. So I wrote a skit based on that, and I presented it. They liked it, and asked me to read it. And I went up on the stage and read it. And then we decided, well, you do it really well. Why don't you do it? So I did it. And from that, I also created a impression of our English teacher, Mrs. Skelton, who was in love with Charles Dickens and would talk to him during class constantly. So I did an impersonation of her, and it just felt really good. But the bottom line was, when I walked out onto the stage the very first time, and I got those laughs, and I got those cheers, and I could feel I had them, and I could feel the timing. I knew exactly when to drop the line. Not through practice, it just came naturally. And so when I got to Wellesley, which is where I first went to college, I'm sorry, when I applied to Wellesley, in the section where you put your interest, I put theater, which was an honest answer. I didn't feel like I had done any theater. You know, I was an usher in one. I did the senior class show. That's not the same as doing theater, but that's where I learned to love it. That's where I got bitten. So I have an interest in theater. Also, when you get to Wellesley, you're assigned a big sister. Now, you may not ever see your big sister, but mine showed up at the door. And I was there with my boyfriend. My boyfriend and I are in my dorm room. Someone knocks on the door. I open the door, and there's Karen, my big sister. Oh, wow. How do you know I was interested in theater? She's come to ask me if I would play a small part, one of the whores in the bar of Bertolt Brecht's A Man's a Man. And I said yes, you know, sight unseen. And I got some stuff together, and I went to rehearsal right there, you know, and it was like, oh, really? And there I was in a skimpy costume in a bar, and I loved it. I don't think I had any lines, just hanging around the bar with the soldiers, and I absolutely loved it. Now, what was so beautiful about it was, now this is my first stage play, real play. The company was called Theatron that was doing it, and it was, the artistic director was Evangeline Morphos, or Morfoso, I think it was Morphos, who eventually became the dean of NYU's theater school.
Wow.
I'm sure she's retired by now, because she would be a few years older than I am. But she had started this theater company, and it was comprised of actors from Wellesley, Harvard, and I think there was a guy from Princeton. I'm not really sure why, because Princeton was some distance. But at any rate, and we were going on a tour. So we did the play in Cambridge at the on team at Harvard. We did the play, of course, at Wellesley. We did the play, and I may have these names wrong. It might, maybe the on team was elsewhere. But at any rate, we went down to Yale and did it. That's where one of the fellows was, from Yale, not Princeton. But we also did it at Princeton. And so it was my first stage play. I was in a road company, however short the road was, and they were just Ivy League schools. So, you know, we didn't get some of the criticism we could have gotten. But most importantly, I was on the road with these fantastic actors. These guys were so good. These guys were as good as the people I had watched work at the Southwark Theater. Wow. So although they were all student actors, they were professionals in every respect. And Evangeline was a fantastic director. It didn't surprise me at all that she ended up being the dean at NYU. So yeah, that's how it started. I just kind of got bitten. I was bitten one piece at a time.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
right, everybody, welcome back to TVT, Theater Vets Talk. Here we are with the phenomenal, Artie Award winning Miss Verneice Turner. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm just seeing what you and your colleagues are doing. I'm doing good.
Thank you, V. Thank you. So, can you please tell us how you got your start in theater?
Okay, I got my start in theater. Well, first, like so many of us, I believe, first at church. You know that little Easter program.
Easter plays.
Okay, you do that Easter play.
Yep.
You start off when you little, Jesus wept. Okay, and you know, and have the Lord speaking to you, and you say your little line, the Lord's prayer. The Lord is my, and you the 23rd Psalm.
Yep.
When you're going through a challenging time, the Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy follow me all the days of my life. And I dwell in the house, the ways of the Lord forever and ever. Janie B. Stewart, Christian Endeavor.
You know, everybody, it seems like church, for
Yes.
most people, especially most in this area, most actors that are of color seem like the church plays, the Easter Sundays, those were the first shows. So talk about that
services.
transition and how you went from that to deciding I want to get into
Okay.
professional theater.
Of course, it was church. And then I was blessed to have a grandmother who was into cultural events, like at the Kleinhans Music Hall. And through her, we went to see an event celebrating African American History Month. And it was Malcolm Ernine who had found the African American Culture Center. And we went there, we saw a showcase of African American history, including dance starting out in Africa, like funk and whatnot, and moving on up to modern dance. Glennis Green and Benji Owalo, two fabulous dancers that I was fortunate enough to study under. I saw them on the stage. And then I said, okay, Mama, I want to dance. And my grandmama said, well, African Culture Center is right around the corner. And that's how I got started. I won't forget, I went there and studied under Glennis Green dance. I believe it's Renee Simone for ballet. June Duell for drama, Jewel Duell Sanders. Many of us should know her from the various plays that she did as an actress at the Paul Robeson Theater. Also, she and I ended up going to New York in a production. And also, she's one of the founders of Acting in Faith Theater Company, who are very supportive of the theater scenes like Olamide. And so I studied under her, and from there on, got my start at the African American Culture Center.
Nice. So I had the pleasure of working my first production at the Paul Robeson Theater myself was under Miss June's direction, which was Polk County. And I mean, hilarious, man. Like, I learned a lot from her, but she was just so funny. Like, we had such a good time in the rehearsal process. I always tell people, as an actor, you know, director, all that stuff, the rehearsal process has always, for me, been the best time. I like to go in there and perform, but to see it come to life. Tell us a little bit about that, because the time that you were at the Cultural Center, there was a lot of powerhouses coming out of there at that time. Can you talk about some of the people that you performed with or got to see perform around that time?
I was fortunate enough, there was a little bit rougher transition after Malcolm Ernine, and then we had Ed Lawrence, who became artistic director. And through Ed Lawrence, I got to be on my first professional performance as a dancer in this production, Black Man in White America. And I got to work with an area actor that some people might know of, Joel Giambra. And also Manny Freed was in that production.
Wow.
There was also George Freeman, a former African-American actor, phenomenal. He's no longer with us. And many other actors I got a chance to watch and observe. Back in those days, you came to rehearsal and you were expected to stay at rehearsal, even if you were just in the opening scene. But got started there, and then the next play I did was a play called Night Class at Harlem U, and it was about street life. And I got to meet some wonderful actors and performers there. And I did so many plays there, I can't even recount them all. There was Night Class at Harlem U, there was The Blacks, which was directed by Lorna Hill when she first came here from to the University of Buffalo, stepping in for Ed Smith, who was on sabbatical. And I've got to perform in plays such as Dunbar, Branches of the Same Tree. We did Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope was at Santora's Dinner Theater over in the 70s. And just did Long Time Since Yesterday, a whole host of performances working with some phenomenal people that I was also dancing with Senior Haemsworth, because we did both dance and theater. It was a whole multifaceted thing that went on for a number of years that I got to do there. The River Niger, which was directed by Laverne Clay, worked with people that Harold White, he was in Branches of the Same Tree that we did, and I mentioned the River Niger, and did The Black Girl in Search of God, written by Bernard Shaw. Miss Baines was kind enough to let me direct that, with a whole host of wonderful actors like Kinsey Brown. That's where we first got Roosevelt Tilwell on the stage. And my sister-in-law, Kathy Robinson, who did a phenomenal job. Just a whole list of people that I was fortunate enough to work with throughout the years that I was there.
And I know the first play that I ever seen you perform in was A Little Bit of Paradise at Roadless Travel Theater. And at that time, Annette Stanley Taylor, she wrote that, and Cyrilli's good friend of mine was in that as well, and Itina. Itina Cook, another good friend of mine, and when I saw that show, and that was one of the first times where I seen, it was almost like you were watching almost like a movie, because of course the set was just like immaculate, but the performances that you guys gave were just so genuine and like realistic, and it brought that piece to life. Is there any play that you can remember where you were like, you could say that was probably the best time you've had on the stage?
Oh, wow. There are so many plays that I could possibly say that, just like when I did West Side Story with Theater for Youth, and To Kill a Mockingbird at Studio Arena under the direction of Scott Barron, having done From the Mississippi Delta, which originated here in Buffalo at Ujima. Initial director was Lorna Hill, then Ed Smith picked it up because Lorna got called out to LA to do a movie there, and which was written by Indesha Idame Howland, the play, which I ended up stepping into because a young lady, sad to say, had to leave the play due to family issues. And just real quick, don't feel bad if you don't get a part in a play and you even go out and figure you're not going to do theater anymore. It's always good to keep your chops sharp, because what happened was I had did a play with Ed Smith, and the playwrights remember me from the particular play, and she said, well, since this young lady is going to step out, why don't we give Verneice a call? And on my birthday, I got a phone call, and Ed Smith said, hey, this is Ed Smith. Verneice, are you available? We're going to be opening in less than 4 weeks. Can you step in and come and do this play? And I was like, oh, and happened to end up performing with my first drama instructor, June Duell.
Wow.
And we had a young lady, Regina Jackson, who, and we did From the Mississippi Delta. I have to say that was one of the biggest experiences because it was a play that originated here in Buffalo. Then the producer, Woody King, came in from New York, and he saw the play, and instead of just taking the play itself and casting it with New York actresses, he said, well, shoot, since y'all already got it together, let's take the whole cast.
Wow.
So fortunately, myself and June were available to go down. And so we had a New York experience, praise God in Jesus' name. Things were slow at work, and I asked the boss for a leave of absence for 2 months. He said, fine, no problems. That 2 months ended up going into 6 months.
Wow.
And so I was in New York from September to February, and I believe it was 1987 to 88, or it could be 86, 80, somewhere in there. And to have that whole New York City experience, and then on top of that, we did the play at Grand Street Theater, which is off Broadway. Yes, there is such a thing as off Broadway, and sad to say, off Broadway has now become what off Broadway used to be. Wow. And the play was picked up because there was an issue with another production. So the Negro Ensemble Company said, well, hey, y'all got a play already set, and we ended up getting that production picked up and performed off Broadway. Nice. In New York City, and got great reviews in New York, and it ended up touring the world. I didn't go with it because I had a life back at home that I very much enjoyed. And even though I love theater, I also love another part of my life. So I guess I'll have to wind it down to the fact that From the Mississippi Delta really played a big part in my heart, which ended up being produced again by Road Less Travel Theater in 2012. And we were fortunate enough to have June Duell come back and play her original role, and Danica, I can't recall her last name at the moment, but I have to say it was From the Mississippi Delta, a play that had a bigger impact on me because I ended up directing the Road Less Travel, thank you Road Less Travel production, directing that particular production, which was here in New York, which was here in Buffalo, New York, which ended up working out very, very well.
But I got to see that too, and you did so awesome. One thing that me and my wife plays a 5-year-old character, and when she saw you do that little girl, we were like, wow. But that shows you how powerful acting is.
Yes.
When you can just leave all of yourself and completely embody another person. And you did that definitely with that show.